All right, we are rolling. I'm Johnny Bluesit, and welcome to the Art Bunker, coming at you live. And today, I wanted to make a little video for my friends in the Boston Urban Sketchers about a question that I get pretty frequently about books. What art books do you like? What art books do you recommend? So, first, I wanted to say a couple of words about why I would like a book or not like a book. There are a lot of books out there. There's a ton of instructional material out there, especially on YouTube. So the problem is that, like perhaps many of you, I do not have any special talents or aptitudes. I'm just a regular factory issue guy. And a lot of these videos and instructional materials are made by people who have special talents. And so when they show you things, they're not really showing you how to do it. They're showing you how they do it. And you may not be able to replicate how they do it if you don't have the talents and aptitudes that they have. And I run into this quite a lot. As an example, some years ago, I was watching a video, and this was meant to be an instructional video, believe it or not, by a comic artist who was one of the greats in the 90s. He's still great. You'd recognize his name. So he was drawing, I think it was a drawing of a gorilla he was using as a demonstration. So he lays the Bristol board out on the table, and he takes a bottle of ink, and he starts just squirting the ink directly all over the page. And he says, yeah, this is really not the right thing to do, but it's what I do, and it kind of works for me. And, you're looking at this going, oh, dude, what are you doing? So then that's not bad enough. He gets this ratty old watercolor brush that's got hairs sticking up all over the place. And he sticks it down on the paper and starts just pushing these puddles of ink around. And he goes, yeah, this is my 6-year-old's watercolor brush. It's not in good shape. You should probably use a better brush than this, but it works for me. And you're just looking at this like, dude, stop. You're ruining it. And, of course, at the end, it looks fabulous because this guy is amazing. And you and I can't learn anything from something like that. Even the great Kim Jong-gi, rest in peace, if you were to take lessons from him, he wouldn't teach you to do what he does. He would start you out with the basics that everybody starts everyone out with, which is, perspective, the horizon line, vanishing points, the figure, all that. So the books that I like are written by people who don't have any special talents or aptitudes, and they're very analytical, and they know exactly why they do what they do, and they break things down into step-by-step that people like us can follow. So the first book, which is very important for urban sketchers, is called Perspective for Comic Book Artists by David Chelsea. And this book actually is a comic book, which makes it very accessible and very easy to read. And one of the reasons why I really like that book is because I find a lot of perspective books tend to fall into one of two categories. So books that are written for fine artists are not technical enough because they have a tendency to assume that, why would you ever construct anything from scratch? If you're drawing something, surely it must be right in front of you. So you just need a passing familiarity with the subject, and that's good enough. Well, for urban sketching, that's often not good enough because a lot of times you can't really stand where you would like to stand because you'd be in the middle of the street, so you have to change the angle of what you're drawing, or maybe you want to move the point of view up or down for dramatic reasons. And if you're a comic book artist, it's really not good enough because you have to invent things out of whole cloth. And then on the other side, the other extreme, is a lot of perspective books are written for architects. And if you're an architect, you have to take a floor plan, and you have to go from a floor plan to a mathematically perfect point of view rendering of what you would see if you were standing in the space. And everything has to be mathematically perfect. And so books like that get you way too deep into calculations that you don't really need to do. For our purposes, if you're an urban sketcher or even if you're a comic book artist, you are more like, I would say, a film director than you are like an architect. So there's no need for your stuff to be mathematically perfect. It's just set pieces that have to look good in the shot. And a lot of times you'll do things that are not strictly mathematically kosher, like forcing the perspective and things that they do in movies. But I find David Chelsea's book really walks the line nicely, like right down the middle. It's just technical enough to get things to look good without getting you all bogged down in math. All right, next up on the list is a very old book, which is called Figure Drawing for All It's Worth by Andrew Loomis. And I think this book is about 80 years old by now. So if you want to have people in your drawings, and I recommend that you do, because having figures in the drawing gives it a sense of scale. You can sort of tell how big everything else is in relation to the people walking around. Andrew Loomis was also a man with no aptitudes or talents. He became a legendary instructor later on in his life, but believe it or not, he was almost kicked out of art school the first week he was there because his drawings were so bad. So his book has a very step-by-step, this is how you construct it. There's no magic required. There's no talent required. You follow the method, do the exercises, and you will get the results. So that is a book I highly recommend. Now, for urban sketching, you can stop there, if you like. There's no need to do your sketches in color, although a lot of people do. If you do want to branch off into color, there are two books that I like a lot. This first one is called Color and Light, A Guide for the Realist Painter by James Gurney. And the other one is called How to Paint Landscapes Quickly and Beautifully by Nathan Fowkes, Fowkes. So Color and Light has the most lucid explanation of color theory that I think I've ever seen anywhere. Gurney is very analytical. He comes from a family of engineers, and he really breaks it down for you, what choices he's making and why he's making those choices. And Fowkes is the same way. Very analytical, really tells you what to do. If you ask, a lot of artists, I should note, don't like to be that analytical, and I think that's a mistake. A lot of artists will tell you things like, well, just buy a set of acrylic paints, that's what I did, and sort of screw around with them for 10 or 15 years and you'll just get a feel for it. Well, you know, some of us, as you can probably tell, don't have 10 or 15 years for screwing around. We need to get an actual map of the territory and know what we're doing. And those two books break it down for you very nicely. And then the last book on my agenda, I actually have reservations about recommending, but it is the only book on this topic that I'm aware of that exists. And it's called Dynamic Wrinkles in Drapery by Byrne Hogarth. And it's about how to draw the clothed figure. So, Byrne Hogarth, as great as he was and as much respect as I have for him as an artist, is not one of my favorite instructors. And the reason is because he's a little bit too talented and a little bit too intuitive. And so I find his instruction, for me, doesn't break it down as granularly as it might have. And I find that he leaves gaps in his presentation, that sometimes I can get over those gaps myself and sometimes I can't. He doesn't really give you step-by-step, this is how you build it, the way some of these other authors do. But, like I said, it's the only book on wrinkles and drapery that I'm aware of. And in art school, they're very tightly focused on drawing the nude figure, and there's a very good reason for that. It's because if you want to learn anatomy, that's what you have to do. But in the real world, obviously, generally people aren't walking around naked, you know, at least in my city, they're not. And so drawing the clothed figure is a much more common problem to have than drawing the nude figure. And so if you have some idea of the wrinkles in clothing and why they form and the forces that affect them, then it really gives you some nice analytical tools for breaking it down and drawing the clothed figure. So I want to add one more thing about books. is obviously just reading a book isn't going to get you there. You're going to have to work through the exercises in the book, and you're going to have to really put in the hours. But if you do that, they'll pay dividends. And a lot of these books can be found used, and a lot of them can be found at your local library in many states, including the one I live in the library system. If they don't have it in your local library, they can borrow it from some other library and get it for you. But if you can only afford one or two books, then the David Chelsea book and the Andrew Loomis book are the ones I would definitely get. So, just lastly, I'm not affiliated with any of these publishers. I don't get kickbacks or anything. These are just the books that I like and the books that have done me good. So I think I'm going to wrap it up at this point, and if you feel that this video helped you, please hit the like button. That really helps the channel out with the algorithms, and to be notified of when I post new videos, hit the subscribe button. And this is Johnny, signing off.